According to a new story from the Wall Street Journal, Trump's 2020 re-election is being threatened by a shrinking voter base of white working class voters. It's being replaced by white college-educated voters who lean Democratic and by minority groups. Over the past couple weeks, I did a few videos, first talking about how immigration would impact the Electoral College. Some people said that I got some stuff wrong on that, so I did an update. The next video I did talked about how blue states are actually losing residents to net domestic migration, meaning people from New York and Illinois particularly are leaving the state and going to other places. And as the internet allows more and more people to work remotely, they're going to be spreading out, and this could reduce the population and the Electoral College seats in big blue states. So it's hard to know exactly who's right about what's going to happen. But Donald Trump has taken a firm stance on immigration and actually made things much more harder across the board. I hear stories from friends about how their friends in other countries can't even get tourist visas. But I think it's fair to point out, everybody seems to have all the answers. Trump will win again. No way he'll win. Be wary of 2020 election predictions. And I completely agree. Although I kind of lean towards Trump is going to win for a lot of reasons, here's what we're going to do in today's segment. I want to talk to you about this Wall Street Journal story on demographic shifts and why I think the Wall Street Journal is actually wrong about this. But then I want to go through Donald Trump's approval ratings, which, surprise, surprise, have peaked, tying for the highest position he has ever been in the Real Clear Politics average, aside from when he just got elected. So let's see what the Wall Street Journal is saying about why Trump might lose due to a shrinking base of white working class voters. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do is share this video. YouTube has made some algorithmic changes. My channel be hurting, but we're working on some big changes for 2020. So outside of my plans to adapt, to improvise, adapt, and overcome, you sharing this video seriously just overcomes any algorithmic, challenge I might face. I'll put it this way. I don't care what YouTube does. If my content is good enough and people are willing to share it, my business will succeed. If my content is terrible, then don't share it, and eventually I will cease to function like any private business. But let's get back to the news from the Wall Street Journal. They say, demographic shift, poised to test Trump's 2020 strategy. Full stop, I disagree. Trump's support in the black community is way up according to 3 different polls. If that's true, I think Trump's strategy is actually working and he's prepared for this. But let's see what they have to say. The Wall Street Journal reports, President Trump's 2020 election strategy relies largely on the white working class base that he excited in 2016, but he faces a demographic challenge. The electorate has changed since he was last on the ballot in ways likely to benefit Democrats. Working class white voters are projected to decline by 2.3 percentage points nationally as a share of eligible voters compared with the last election because they are older and therefore dying at a faster rate than our Democratic groups. As those voters pass on, they are most likely to be replaced by those from minority groups or young white voters with college degrees, groups that lean Democratic. But I do want to stop here and point out. Actually, no, I don't want to stop here. Let's move on. We'll get to that. We'll get to other points later. I'll come back to these. That means Mr. Trump will have to coax more votes from a shrinking base or else find more votes in other parts of the electorate. Trump has a certain hill to climb, and this suggests that the hill gets a little steeper, said Roy Texera, sorry, I can't pronounce names, a demographer with the States of Change Project, which provided assessments of the 2020 electorate. They say changing battlegrounds. Projections show that the pool of eligible voters in 2020 will be different than in 2016 as white voters with a 4-year college degree decline as a force in the electorate. Now let's go back to this point that I've wrapped that up. Donald Trump's base is larger. According to the New York Times Upshot, they say his favorability is way up. His approval rating is essentially way up, but his favorability today is way higher than when he even got elected. So while there may be a general decline in white working class voters, not all of these people voted for Trump. Many of them are, blue dog Southern Democrats or they're Union Democrats. And while many of these people did support Trump, a lot of them probably voted for Hillary Clinton. You need to understand in these blue wall states, in like the Rust Belt, for instance, Trump won by very, very thin margins, razor thin margins. While losing 1 or 2 of these states wouldn't have changed much because Trump won by, I think, like 70 electoral votes, he was close. It was really close to not making it across that threshold. Well, necessarily. The point is, he could have stand to lost 1 or 2 of these states. Today, while the white working class base may be shrinking, they point this out, and we'll read more, I think it's important to point out Trump's base is larger. He's won over more people. The economy. But rest assured, I have another article from a couple days ago arguing Trump's economy is not good enough. There's always something. That's why I highlighted the NPR story. Everybody thinks they have the answers. I'll tell you this, man. I think Trump's going to win, but seriously, I don't know, man. It's such an unprecedented time. So let's check out this graph here. They say in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina, white working class individuals are projected to go around between 2 to 2.8 percentage points. And we're going to see small fractions of minority groups, including Asians, Hispanics, African Americans, and whites with a college degree, going up in these same places. They say the margin of victory, considering only demographic change for 2016, shows that Trump will lose Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin based on the 2016 election. Now, hold on. They're arguing that in 2016, Trump won these states. In 2020, he will lose those three by 0.5, 0.64, and 0.15 points. But that doesn't take into consideration the New York Times upshot assessment showing Trump's base is bigger today. Look, man, as I've pointed out time and time again, I think you got to factor in that people might really dislike Trump, but they love that money. You tell somebody the money is good, and they're going to, as I describe it, look over their shoulders, vote for Trump, and then brag about how the orange man is bad and they voted against him. I think at the end of the day, people are going to say, put the green in my pocket and you get my vote. That's why Trump's base is likely larger today, and it's likely why Trump's approval rating is at its highest point, tied for so it's 45.3 in the aggregate, the highest it's ever been, just outside of right when he was elected. The reason I separate that is because right when he got elected, he didn't do anything. So it's like, what was his approval rating really about? It sank dramatically. And we'll get to this in a second. Let's read more about demographics. They say, the project is a joint venture of think tanks with different ideological leanings. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you've got the Center for American Progress, which is progressive. You've got the Brookings Institute, center left, the Bipartisan Policy Center. And so they're basically more center to center left groups. Naturally, I think it's fair to say you got to be careful about these assessments because people vote based on who they think is going to win. A lot of people do. It's unfortunate. And these left-wing groups are seemingly doing this, well, Trump might win, but there's a slight advantage for the Democrats, just to create this perception that Trump is actually doing worse. But this what they don't understand is that, check this out. They mention that African Americans are going up in these areas, but do they mention that Trump's support in the African American community is actually way up to the highest a Republican may have ever seen, outside of George W. Bush? But that was related to, conflict stuff. So I have to be careful about how I describe these things because YouTube is going to ban me. But hey, you know how it works. They say, while analysts say Mr. Trump will likely have to boost turnout from his core voters to counter demographic change, they also say the task is achievable. They cite Mr. Trump's strong connection to his base, as well as signs that turnout in the fall is on track to set records, given that the president has driven up engagement among both parties. They say demography creates the backdrop for the play, but it doesn't determine the outcome of the play, said Whit Ayers, a Republican pollster whose clients have included GOP Senators Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham. Tim Murtaugh, communications director for the Trump re-election campaign, said Mr. Trump was reaching out to voters from all backgrounds, and they had better tools than in 2016 to draw supporters to the polls. The voter data we have is unsurpassed, and we have maintained contact and built our voter list by tens of millions of names. Our ability to contact and turn out the president's supporters will really be unmatched in presidential campaign history. The analysis by States of Change doesn't take into account a myriad of factors that can swing any election, including who may switch parties or whether turnout will rise or fall. It offers a starting point for assessing the 2020 electorate by looking only at changes in who will be eligible to vote in November 3rd, who has entered and who has exited the electorate. So I find the narrative interesting. I know there have been a lot of angry conservatives because you simultaneously have this narrative in the press where they're like, the replacement theory is this grand conspiracy among, far-right groups, while simultaneously the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post have run stories arguing that as the white working class base shrinks and minority and immigrant groups come in, Republicans lose out. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not propaganda. It's literally a fact being put out by numerous organizations, yet for some reason people are mad at me for just reading the news. Calm down, everybody. So here's the thing. There's a lot of things to consider. The first thing I want to do is lightly pass this story. I'm not going to get too much into it, but I want to point out, they say how Trump created a new global capital of exiles. Many people on the other side of the border, stranded. I'm just going to lightly point this out, that Trump has had a strong hand against immigration. Everybody knows it. It's not just illegal immigration, it's immigration across the board. Whatever your opinion is, it's happened. The Huffington Post called this Trump's virtual wall, or something to that effect. They said Trump got his wall, not the physical 30-foot high concrete sea to shining sea wall. He got invisible barriers. It is much, much harder to come to the U.S. even as a tourist. So while they might say immigration will affect these trends, I'm curious if they take into account the fact that Trump has reduced all immigration, legal or otherwise, by 70% from 2008 to 2019. That will play a huge role. But more importantly, let's get back to the issue of Americans and who they choose. Donald Trump is notoriously, maybe that's not the right word, but famously, it's what's the right word? It's a very high profile thing Trump is doing. I'll put it that way. Targeting black voters. And many people are surprised because it's not something Republicans tended to do, or well, at least. And so there was one story that I found funny that said Trump is shocking black voters by actually trying to get their votes. But it's working. I'll tell you what, man, I saw this podcast. It was amazing. It was these black dudes were talking about Trump's behavior, and they were equating it to almost like hip hop culture of boasting and bragging and talking big. And I thought it was funny that it's true. It's like Trump is a braggart. There's a very similar kind of attitude of this hip hop, urban, talk big, bling bling kind of stuff. I know that sounds very I'm a nerdy dude wearing glasses, right? So I have no idea what I'm talking about for the most part. But I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I do see the similarities these guys were talking about. More importantly, we have a story from the Washington Times. The president counts on black voters for a second term. How to win re-election 2020. It seems that while these groups may be pointing out demographic change is bad for Trump, Trump has already taken action to actually court minority voters. And I find it really funny that they try to claim Trump is a bigot of epic proportions, and the dude's literally got massive support according to 3 different polls, most notably Emerson, which according to 538 is one of the most credible polls. Let's check out the story from the Washington Times. They say, how does the Trump campaign plan to win re-election? Moving black voters into the Republican camp. The case for this unlikely strategy is laid out. Coming home, quote, Coming Home, How Black Americans Will Re-elect Trump, a book that has already become a blueprint for the Trump political team. The authors are Vernon Robinson III, a black Air Force officer and former socialist, and Bruce Eberl, a prominent political strategist and direct mail specialist. Both played major roles in Ben Carson's presidential bid in 2016. They argue that black voters put Mr. Trump into the White House, having received more than 20% of the black vote in the key state of Pennsylvania. Black precincts went overwhelmingly for Hillary, but the low income and welfare recipients who inhabit those precincts make up just 1/5 of the state's black population. They say the remaining 78.8%, who are working and above the poverty line, the authors observe, weighed in heavily for Mr. Trump, giving him his win. They also stress that black voters gave Mr. Trump his margin of victory in Michigan. Even more encouraging, say the authors, is the steady exodus of black Americans from the ranks of the Democratic Party. A Washington Post headline is telling, quote, 4.4 million 2012 Obama voters stayed home in 2016, more than a third of them black. Approval of the president rose to 34% among registered black voters in November, according to the respected Emerson poll, double the number received just a month earlier. Rasmussen came up with a similar finding. The mid-November Marist poll landed Trump at 33% among non-white adults. Other respected pollsters have him at half this number, but far above the 8% figure in 2016. And there it is. Washington Times pointing out, regardless of whether or not it's as good as Emerson thinks, it is double at least where it was in 2016. Well, they say most of them have him at half, so I don't want to be overly hyperbolic, okay, exaggerating. But the fact is, Trump's approval among minorities is way up. And I gotta say, it's kind of a weird thing for me, but I'm kind of glad because I feel like the Democratic Party has taken advantage of low-income and minority communities, and this is one of the reasons I have great disdain for them. Although I disagree with Republicans, don't like what they stand for, I feel like the Democrats take advantage of me, where I grew up, and that's why I kind of feel the way I do. Policy-wise, I'm rather left. You should come hang out with me and you'll see just how much of a lefty I am. And, that's why I was a big proponent of Bernie in 2016, because he stood for civil rights and I trusted him. Now I think he's pandered a bit too much. I still do, like the guy a bit. But I've soured on his politicking. I'm not a fan for a variety of reasons, but I'll put it that way. I do think he's a bit too far left for me. So, but here's what I want to say. I think that there's an importance in balance. And when you have only certain groups of people only supporting certain parties, there's no competition politically. I think now if we see more people, although it's still a minority, move to the Republican Party, there can be an actual competition of ideas, and that will help us solve problems. As much as I disagree with a lot of what Republicans stand for in terms of like culture and religious type issues, I think economically it's just a general argument, right? So should we implement this policy in terms of taxes or minimum wage or whatever? And you're going to have people arguing up, down, left, right, top, down, whatever. When it comes to moral questions, I stand more firmly on the left. I do lean left on a lot of economic issues, but I like the idea of rigorous debate. To put it this way, in big cities where it's dominated just by Democrats, there's no challenging bad ideas, and bad ideas get implemented and never get fixed. I welcome the competition. I welcome those to challenge my ideas, and if that means people move to the Republican Party, but still overwhelmingly Democrat, I think it's typically a good thing. More importantly, my perspective on the Democrats, as probably why you see the way I frame things that I do, it's really, really simple, man. I grew up in Chicago. Like I said, they took advantage of me. I've seen the politicians lie. They've lied to my face and my friends, and I've seen just how they manipulate, but there was never anyone to challenge them because everybody who lined up would just say the same thing and do the same thing, and so I felt betrayed and I felt angry, and I carry that with me. It is what it is. While I can disagree politically, I feel like the Democrats literally don't exist for the most part. That's, again, why I liked Bernie in 2016. It's why I like Yang and I like Tulsi. When I look at the Republican Party, I see a group of people that I disagree with. When I look at the Democratic Party, I see people who are just lying to my face and don't actually believe anything. And therein lies the big problem. I'm not going to be supporting Trump on what he's doing, but at least I really believe Republicans, for the most part, are doing what they think they should do. And therein lies the main challenge. It's not true for all Democrats. There's a bunch of good ones, okay? I do like Yang. I do like Tulsi. Yang's not really a politician, but that's the point. Anyway, you get the general idea. I see this story. I'm kind of like, I like this. I do. I think we need political competition. I think we need people to fight as hard as possible to prove they have your best interests at heart. And if you only have one party, they don't got to do anything. As Nancy Pelosi put it, she said this, at an event, she held up a glass of water and she said, in my district, in AOC's district, you put a D on this glass of water and it would win. That is not good for the people. There is no incentive to actually improve the lives of anybody. So I like this. I do. You know what? Because I'll tell you this, when Donald Trump won in 2016, I laughed. And I love this story. I'm proud of the laugh I laughed when he won. Because to me, it was finally seeing the liars getting, comeuppance. I want a good, strong Democratic Party. I want people to challenge the ideas of Republicans, and I want things to improve for everybody. But you don't win by cheating. And Hillary Clinton cheated. You get what you deserve. But let's move on, because I got a bit more for you. Why Trump will lose in 2020. Okay, says Rick Newman over at Yahoo. They say this. First, the economy isn't strong enough. He goes on to talk about a variety of issues, corporate issues, growth isn't that high. I'm not going to read through everything because I do want to get to more. Bloomberg's money, Trump's healthcare blind spot, and I believe he might have one more, and Obama's role. So let's address this. First of all, I disagree, okay? I see the points he's making. The economy is amazing, especially in the black community. You need to understand that Trump's support in the black community is probably very high because he's done, whether you like it or not, the policies under Trump have improved conditions. Unemployment is at record lows. I believe it's around 5% in the black community, 3.1 or so nationwide. I mean, that's incredible. Bloomberg's money is a serious factor, however. Bloomberg is dumping insane amounts of cash, and I am outraged that he's only putting about 10% in digital. I'm right here, buddy. Don't you want to run ads on my contents? So he's doing like 100 plus million per week, or maybe it's not that high. It's like 30 million per week, some ridiculous number. And they're projecting he's going to spend around 360 million by the time Super Tuesday comes up. You got to take into account that is serious. However, for now, Bloomberg's targeting Democrats, not Trump, so I'm going to have to disagree. While it may play a role going into after the nomination, right now, Bloomberg's in third place. He's not going to get the nomination. So what is he going to do after he loses? He's currently not targeting Trump, and he can't do what he's doing if he doesn't get the nomination because there's limits on, how much you can spend. Hiccups. So right now, Bloomberg's just dumping money, hurting Democrats. Sorry, I'll disagree. While I think there is a serious threat from this money, it's only if Bloomberg wins, and he's likely not going to. Trump's healthcare blind spot is a legit issue. I know Trump has mentioned it to a certain extent, or Republicans have mentioned it to a certain extent, But you got to take this one seriously, man. Seriously, seriously. I do not hear enough of this from Republicans. And this is going to be a main driving force because you got a lot of older people. And although they're likely to lean Trump in a lot of ways, many of them are hearing that sweet, sweet Medicare for all from Bernie Sanders. And that's good news. That's good news for Bernie, I should say. Barack Obama's role is absolutely serious. The man is extremely popular. Trump and Obama tied in the Gallup poll for America's most admired man. That means a lot of moderate voters, they're going to listen to what Obama has to say, and he hasn't said much. After the nomination is clear, I think Obama's going to have a ton to say, and his voice carries weight. If you are a Trump supporter and you think you got this one in the bag, you got nothing coming. Hubris will be your downfall. Mark my words, okay? Hillary Clinton's hubris was her downfall. A lot of people are very confident. Do not be confident. If you're a Democrat or Republican, you will lose when you think you're going to win. Never underestimate your foe. I hate to refer to politics as like an enemy or foe, but let's do it more in a friendly competition kind of way. I know a lot of people think this is life or death, so the point is, I don't care if you're going to vote for a Democrat or Republican. I'm telling you this right now. If you think you are going to win, that's when you lose. You need to make sure you double your efforts no matter who it is you're voting for. Get out there and vote, Democrat or Republican. Okay? But let's wrap up with a final thought on the matter. Will Trump lose? Well, I'll tell you this. There have been some major international instances today, or in the past few days, which I can only vaguely in passing mention, and that may have an impact on Trump's approval rating and favorability. But for the time being, the latest poll going into January 2nd, Trump's approval rating is tied for the highest it's ever been outside of when he was first elected. Let me tell you something. The peak was 45.3 in the aggregate. That's where we're at today. If we go back to right when he was elected around the beginning of February, yeah, he got 46.1. And I think it's fair to mention, okay, this is second highest. But the reason I exclude that is because when he got elected, he didn't do anything. He got elected and that was it. Almost immediately after, his approval rating tanked very, very, like a lot. And it spiked and waved up and down, and it fell to a low point in December of 2017 around, what do we got here, 37.1. As of today, Trump's approval rating is tied for the highest it's ever been in the bulk of his presidency, okay? And the reason why this is interesting, first, Rasmussen, of course, has him at 50%, but they highlight Obama's approval rating. Lo and behold, according to Gallup, once again, we have seen Donald Trump's approval rating surpass Barack Obama's for the same time period. You have to take this stuff seriously. Obama got reelected. Trump's got a booming economy. He's got growing support in minority communities, and his approval rating is teetering just above Obama's at the same time. While I can tell you that, going back into a year ago, Obama's consistently been above Trump. We can see this. In April of this year, Trump surpassed Obama. Then it happened again around August of this year, happened again in September, and as of today, Donald Trump is 2 points above Barack Obama. Obama's approval rating started to recover. I'm not sure if Trump's will, but I will tell you this. The economy is golden. It's going to play a major, major role. Now, as for the favorability of Trump, which is different from his approval rating, this is kind of just like, do you like him or not? Trump's favorability is way higher than when he got elected. And you need to remember this. When he got elected over in November, it was in the 40s. And now it's around the same place. But look at his favorability in the election and going up to it. Around the time, around the time he got elected, it peaked. It's not the highest it's ever been, but a month after the election, it peaked. And now Trump's favorability, it went down similar to his job approval, and it's slowly been climbing. The reason I highlight this is because his favorability before the election was a lot lower. And he won. And after he won, people warmed up to him. Now the economy is roaring, and his approval rating is, in the aggregate, it's tied for the highest point. If you think Trump is going to lose, you got another thing coming. But if you are a Trump supporter and you let hubris get in your way, you just might lose. If there's one thing that'll hurt Trump, it's going to be hubris. So let me wrap up. The crux of this segment, what I want to get to. While it's true, demographics are changing. This should be good news for progressives that Trump is trying to court minority votes and offer them something. It kind of flies in the face of the narrative that Trump is a bigot. He's doing everything he can to court minority voters. So, sorry, Trump is transforming the Republican Party into at least a better, closer to representing, America's changing demographics. I know there are a lot of people who are, very racialist, I guess, and they're very concerned about this. But in the end, I don't think American nationalist types, economic nationalist types, really care about race. The left wants to claim that because it's a weapon to try and convince minorities not to vote for them, but Trump is doing everything in his power to actually get those minority votes. Well, I shouldn't say everything in his power. I should say Trump's trying very, very hard. And the fact is, there is concern among some Republicans that they need to address, issues of diversity. Fact remains, I think the left went too far off the rails. And Trump has approached this in a very slow and steady way that's benefiting him greatly, because the polls show in the black community Trump is doing really, really well. He's got great support from people like Kanye West and Candace Owens, and that means a lot. As much as many progressives don't want to admit it, it does. If you want to defeat Trump, you cannot ignore how he is offering things up to minority communities. You can call him a bigot all day and night. That's not changing the minds of people like Kanye and Candace Owens. I'll leave it there. I don't think demographics are going to matter. I think Trump knows it, and I think the Republicans have planned for it. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel, and I will see you all there.